Hello and welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. This is my Calm, Cool, and Crafted channel. My name's AJ, or you can call me Apple Juice. Today, I am working on some jewelry projects. Um, this started with me finding this little guy at Bead World here in Phoenix, and I bought it on a whim, because I don't know, $2 or $3. And I don't know if any of you have the experience of purchasing things and just going, I don't know what I'm going to use it for, but I need it. Uh, this was one of those. And I knew up front that this was going to need to become something down the road, but I didn't know what it was going to be. And then while working on things for FanFest nights for Universal, I had a thought of how to make this work. So we are going to try to make the body jewelry, where like pendant will sit around here, but then chains will be wrapping around the torso. I don't have the exact measurements, so a lot of this is going to be playing it a little bit off of the cuff. There's some of the chains that I have that we're going to be working with that are not going to be able to be assembled today. I want to get the frame done. Who knows? It may turn out awful, but that's okay. So let's jump into what it is that I'm working with here. So, other camera. I have the primary chain that I'm going to be using here. This is a pretty heavily weighted, I believe it's a diamond cut chain, which gives it that like extra shine and flat side, which makes it just, to me, looking a lot nicer. So you'll see it's got a nice shine to it. And so this will be the primary chain for framing. So like when we place it on me, it has enough weight to be visible, but I don't want it to be like there's some chunky chains out there. So this is our primary one that we're going to work through with framing. So the first thing I need to do is be setting the actual neck portion of the chain. Most chains on me need to be about 22 to 24 inches total around my neck to get it to sit kind of lower as a pendant. I may even have to drop it slightly just to allow for some of these chains to land where they need to around the actual chest. So around pecs, around the waist. Uh, this will be the part where I can save some chain by making this portion longer, as long as I can make it look good, without having to do too much to make the rest of the drape sit well. Because ideally, we're having it sit somewhere around here. So let's see what we can measure out for this. First thing I'm going to do is I want to at least connect one side of this around. That way I can drape the remaining around my neck. And we're going to see where that gets us to. So I bought some smaller jump rings for this purpose. I have larger jump rings as well off to the side, just in case I need them. But we're going to just play around with this first fit, because this one I do need to make a cut for. That way I can place a clasp. You want to be able to at least take it off. I mean, I could probably get away with not having one, but I'd prefer to have the ability to attach and detach different portions of it rather than the whole thing all at once. So we're just going to place this guy on our spider web. So I don't know why this grabbed me so much. Not that I have arachnophobia or anything, but I don't know. Spiders don't usually speak to me as a design choice. Oh man, these are really tight. But there's something about this one that was like, it's so cool to have a multi-strand pendant piece, which I'll have to figure out adding a bead into this kind of center hoop here. So with this attached, I'm still going to try and reattach. Still going to try and reattach back to this singular loop. And so that's where I may need a larger one to accommodate that. And then placing some sort of stone, glass, whatever into this middle portion. See if I can get that to be a little more visible. Into this middle portion. So let's see where we're at. And I bought a lot of this chain to be able to fit around my body. I'm not a small person. So when we try and figure out the length, it is not going to be a perfect system. This is, again, we work on vibes a lot of times. See, that might be too long. If I'm going to have a clasp back, I need to remove some distance. But with these side portions, because they come off here and here, I need enough room for them to kind of drape around the chest. I'd like to frame that, like we might as well. So we have to figure out how to get this to sit just right. I think this is probably our length in concept that we're working with. If I need to add a clasp, so I'm using a little lobster claw clasp, which I know is going to be more difficult than I'd like to see. Let's see if maybe zooming this will help a little with that. That these little guys are going to make it possible for me to connect on the back. I'm trying to keep it in size with the chain, and we'll have to add, obviously, some rings to make that work. So I'm trying to buy extra in case I thought I may need it. Well, so we can cut this, and then I can work with this. So, taking where my finger was, let's go ahead and make a cut. At some point, you just gotta make cuts. And there's no way around that. Okay. So here is our rough sizing. That just likes to spin around itself. So once I get this situated, I'm going to want to make sure it lays correctly for its direction. Just let it sit as flat as possible when you're wearing it. I don't want to have a situation where it's getting crossed and tangled and doing whatever it's going to do, because that gets very frustrating. I do not enjoy the process of detangling jewelry. So when we have this chain going around the neck, I just need to find our rough halfway point. That way I can add some loops and add in this lobster claw so we can kind of finish this portion, right? So I need to reattach this to our top portion, and then I'm going to cut this in half and add in our other section. So let's see if we can fit this into our existing small O-ring, which I'm feeling very dubious that we're going to be able to do. It doesn't seem like it's going to work. Oh, jumping onto other topics though while we work on this, I will say that it's been a very strange couple of weeks. I don't know if it's just me, but sometimes I feel like there are hard weeks that become necessary in the process of personal growth, almost. Just the things that occur that kind of force you to change and make room in your life for what's kind of happening at that time. And it definitely felt like one of those kinds of weeks where things were not easy, not great, but that felt like a necessary problem. That it takes that kind of struggle to force me, at least sometimes, to be open to certain kinds of change that I do need to make for myself. And I think it's just I feel rather fortunate that at least I have become capable of something like that. Like, I know in our first video, we were talking a lot about things that inspire me and things that I want. And it was very interesting to be editing that video and in some capacity feeling like, oh, I'm finding that some of those qualities that I do desire are present, and I'm just not doing the best job of seeing them. And that can be just my own lack of awareness, or it could be that I'm highlighting things that are and giving room to things that are more negative, searching for perfection rather than being happy with the things that I have along the way. Hard to say, but in that same direction, it was interesting to get to call up one of my best friends while I was having a kind of a rough evening, to say the least, who I've been friends with for 20 something years. I mean, we're talking about maybe doing like a video together at some point when I am in the same city as her. But it was very nice to get to catch up, but also commiserate on something that felt similar but different for us both, and talk through how we feel about these things with one another. Because, sure, while we can have similar experiences, they're not the same, and what we both take from something like that is going to be different from one another. But it is helpful to still be able to reach out and just say, hey, I'm not doing super great. If you have time, would love to just get to talk, vent about it. And I think one of the things that became pretty clear in that process is kind of what fear in some way dictates in my life. I know that that sounds probably rather obvious in terms of if you're scared, it's obviously going to impact how you approach your life. But it just felt like it was doing too much and preventing me from really connecting in better ways. I feel like people always say, be vulnerable, or finding ways to be your authentic self. But sometimes for people who, like in my camp, feel like they're still trying to find their identity, it's a little bit hard to feel out what is authentic. There's, I'd almost say, impulses that are present, things that feel like me, even though I've not done those things to know for sure. And I find those to be fascinating as kind of a guide in some ways as I learn a little bit more of who I am and what it is that I really want out of life. But that doesn't mean it's perfect, and there's still certainly things that along the way I am still having to learn about myself. And so the having grown up playing like competitive sports and other things like that, because tennis was my main sport, and that's what I spent a lot of my time and energy doing through school. Like, I had coordinated activities of getting out of school early to be able to go play in tournaments, to go do various extracurricular activities with that as my main kind of outside of school stuff. And I think as a kid, it was difficult for me to learn what the appropriate boundaries were for myself of like a healthy amount of competition. And so it turned into a lot of comparing myself to others and feeling less than in many cases. Just if I wasn't able to win a tournament or wasn't playing well enough, like, I was still a good player. It was fine, but It was difficult when it felt like I needed to do more, but I wasn't willing to give more. The My tolerance for having to put in the degree of work that was actually necessary to get somewhere further with that really just wasn't there. Um, and I wasn't really okay with that. The hardest thing was just going, it's fine to be just kind of okay at something, and that's something I'm still working on to this day. That's where I think, hopefully, I can get more comfortable through doing projects like this. Of just, I'm not a professional by any means. I just have the audacity to sit down and think, well, maybe I can do this if I just sit there and futz with it long enough, even though I'm going to lose more and more O-rings along the way. If you can't tell, I feel like my hands are too big. These tools are too big for me to be effectively dexterous. Let me find that O-ring. I'll be right back. We were not successful in finding the O-ring, so we're just going to grab another one. You'd think that I would do a better job at keeping things on this table. I have room, but I'm also just, I like to sit back, and that's probably not the best habit for keeping small things out of the carpet. These things will absolutely just vanish. Jumping back into where we were, though, it was very interesting to hit a point where it's the desire for, I guess I would say, softness or tenderness from myself that I feel like I can mimic getting out for other people as opposed to actually having it for myself. And it exists. The drive and the impulse exists for that within me. But I think that portion of be vulnerable that actually needed to come into existence, I'd almost say, is the idea of being vulnerable will include being okay with not being the very best at whatever the activity is. That I don't need to try and find safety and acceptance through how good I am at something in particular, how expertly I can carry things out, that I won't lose my place if I'm not the best, where that felt true growing up and playing something competitive and needing to be good enough to qualify, to participate, to take part in those activities. There was that like threshold, and even if I could clear the threshold, that didn't feel like enough, and I wasn't willing to accept that as the, I'd almost say, a minimum for myself, or even as a comfortable landing point of just celebrating making it. And even when it came to things like choir, which I did throughout high school, and have picked up again as an adult, things like trying out for solos or trying to be present, I had very much developed this inferiority complex of feeling like, oh, others are getting picked ahead of me, and I'm not doing enough, or I must not be good enough to be selected. Like, I could get myself into the last like round of selections, but actually getting it across the finish line was its own problem. And not that it would have fixed things necessarily, but after kind of hitting this breaking point and went to choir, there's a solo that I really wanted, one that I've been practicing for and trying to sound as good as I can. It was very interesting to realized that sitting there and getting to hear others perform, I mean, I volunteered first because no one else is raising their hand. I am okay with getting the ball rolling. Um, but after getting to try out, I felt I did my best and that was good enough. And that self reassurance was enough to feel comfortable in myself and my position to be able to be there and celebrate my friends who were doing great work. And it was kind of separately an emotional evening of just going, I'm so proud to get to be here with people that I really care about, who I'm getting to hear. To me, singing feels very personal. It's a deeply emotional activity a lot of times. Obviously, some songs that we sing we are not all fans of. But in our current set, there's some really beautiful stuff. And getting to hear friends of mine who, as a group, we were encouraging everybody to try out. Just like everyone can do it. Everyone deserves to sing, be acknowledged that they sang well, and be celebrated. And hearing some people who I love and adore who just they're not people who would go for a solo, generally speaking. They feel maybe in a similar way that I do of not being enough is it was so, I don't know, heartwarming, very eye-opening. It felt like I was getting to experience something very personal with them. And it very much was a privilege to get to hear them sing. And boy, some of them are really great. It was really wonderful to get to hear some people who, even before starting to sing, were saying, like, I would never do this. This is not uh, for me. And kind of putting up walls ahead of time who sound just fantastic. And them feeling excited to be celebrated for their voices. I think, depending on the generation you grew up in, choir can carry a little bit of trauma almost. Of just, there have been times where as I've heard it discussed, the old school style versus the new school of going, hey, old school is very much like some personal jabs get included in with this process. And it's hurtful. I mean, I was banned from singing in the bass section in high school because I was told by my director, every time you sing bass, you sing flat. No assistance with that process whatsoever. And I didn't know what to do about that. And so I got thrown in the tenor section in high school. Not that I couldn't sing it, but more I wanted to be in the bass section. I feel like I'm more of a baritone, but that's probably most men. And even though I had made it, it came with these negative statements about not being good enough or inadequate still. So it was very weird to be like, I've made it, but I can tell that I'm not really making it, so I'm kind of in this category of meh about it. So even when I made the top choir in my high school, it's like, this is just because I can sight read. I can get a note kind of there, but everyone else is there to do the work on that side. I'm just there to kind of lead a little bit. And now coming back into choir as an adult, there's been a lot of shift within the choir community of making the space more inviting and safe for people to sing. I know that I'm not the only one who feels that singing is very personal when it comes to getting to express something on a level that resonates with ourselves emotionally. It's one of the main drivers in my life that I love to get to turn to here and there. And to find that nowadays, as I have done several choirs since then, whether it's friends conducting things I got invited to take part in, some pop-up choirs, and then my regular choir. Now, I've been part of 4 or 5 choirs over the last, I'd say, about 2.5 to 3 years. And it has changed so dramatically in it feeling safer to express that it almost makes me feel uncertain that that's real. You have the trauma response of just, I know what this is like, and the rug pull's gonna happen at some point. It's gonna be unsafe. And so it's been hard to learn to be okay with trusting that where we are now is a different place than where we were then. And so I'm very excited to finally be finding my own footing in that process, and trying to just feel okay. It doesn't have to be great, but feel okay with where I am in it. And I found out, because there were 3 different solos that were up for tryouts, and there was one that I really wanted in particular that was kind of a country folk song called Hard Times. There's a couple different arrangements for men's choirs for that. Ours is one that seems a little bit less performed, but nonetheless, if you've heard it, you kind of know the vibe, generally speaking. And as I tell people, my genre of singing is men sounding pitiful, maybe, or like sad, that kind of ballad, but it has that heartache attached to it. And so this piece really feels that way to me, and was one that I was attached to in some capacity, of wanting to hopefully bring a lot of energy. And in the process of kind of prepping for it, I was using it as an excuse to kind of work on my voice and just learn more about myself and my comfort in singing. And it just, I don't know, it felt like a very different night for me, that I left more excited for others than me. I did find out that I got the solo after rehearsals done. There were some discussions and whatnot about what structure we were looking at doing, but I still felt more excited for the friends that I got to hear sing with their own voice and be vulnerable themselves in our company, that I know for them took that risk and handing over trust to us to support them and not make them feel like they didn't do something great or brave or kind of step out of their comfort zone. And one of them ended up getting one of the solos. It's like, as soon as I heard it, it's like something about, everyone has a different voice, right? There's not this voice is terrible all the time category of voice when it comes to our choir. And just everyone has different sounds. Everyone's vocal cords work differently. And he has been just such a sweet and gentle person within my group. I really enjoy getting to perform with him. I've met a couple of his kids. His sons also sing. And so it was very interesting to have the experience of getting to hear someone who I've heard in the context of our group, and I know he sounds good, but actually being given space to sing, even though he didn't really want to. And his voice just like a warm hug, where I feel like I have a pretty loud voice, so I try and meter it for these videos. But I tend to have quite a lot of volume. And his is in this more kind of medium to soft category, but there's a quality in his voice that really feels so inviting and warm, of just a softness is present. And it sounded just incredible on that specific piece. It was the times that were changing. And basically, it's like an intro solo. The choir does some ooze, then we cut out, and then we have an intro solo. And I feel like a piece like that coming from, a dad himself who is singing on both ends of the meaning of the song almost was very interesting and added its own meaning of just knowing this person and how he usually speaks and talks about his life, his family, and connections, and getting to hear the his voice placed to that text was just fantastic. I feel really privileged to have gotten to hear it, and I'm very excited for other people to hear it. And I don't know, it feels like it just had been a long time since I felt so excited about the prospects of getting to hear other people doing things that it didn't need to, I don't want to say be about me. That's not really where this was before, but just that if I felt like I wasn't doing well enough, that maybe I wouldn't belong or have space. And to finally kind of hit a place for myself where I'm like, I feel comfortable and I'm excited to get to hear people. It was really great. Okay, let's get back to work. That's what I need to do. I need to grab my other larger O-rings. So let me grab those super fast. That way I can make some attachments because this is not going to be the right size to connect to this. So I need to get my one size larger, and then we're going to start connecting the chains to these other pieces once I get this around my neck. So I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. I was using some 3mm jump rings, and these just are too close in size that I don't think I'm going to be able to feel that when I'm trying to put it on. So I'm adding a 4mm, and because of the weight of this, it's like I probably need thick O-rings for this, so I went with 18 gauge, which if you haven't worked with wires before, those numbers going down mean they're bigger. Weird system. I don't know that I understand that. Yeah, we're okay. So that's much more reasonable on size to attach. So let's get this on, and then we're gonna see how this is sitting and take it from there. Okay. Oh, twisted this has already gotten. I'm trying to maintain that this section is the only one that can get twisted if I can manage it, but I do have to do another class because we're actually doing like almost a belt, I would say, on the back side of this. It's inspired. I'll see if I can pull up a photo. There was a product on Etsy, which is not the same, but was serving as kind of a base for what I was looking to do with this. Oh, come on. It's right there. Does this fit? Maybe I'm just not pulling hard enough. Woof! It's a tight fit. I guess I can just do this. Rather than having to deal with fighting it all the way down. Let's try it like this. Okay, we are now at step one. Wow. So, what we're gonna do out of this, let's see if we get this to be clear. We want to attach to these top ones. So this pattern we're gonna do pattern. I'm making it up as we go. I want to do thick on the top and in this middle one. There's two in between, and so I have what is I think called snake chain, if that's what I hear it called in the jewelry stores. Um, I love this stuff. It's really great. So let's see if I can get you a nice shot of that because this stuff is very interesting. So let's see, it's focused on my face so heavily. Either way, you can see it is interconnected very tightly. And it's solid, so even though it's thin, it will still be visible against the body, even if I'm wearing something that is more distracting or uh, has different colors, textures, whatever going on. So I figure that's a good place to try and start with the thinner portions. That'll kind of be the supporting bands, because for this, I want there to be the framing and then things just to add a little bit of visual interest. Okay, so from where we are, we need to now attach, and we're going to build downward. So I think, I said I was going to start with the sides, but I think we actually need to start with this middle one, because this middle one's going to come down and then split. So I need to create kind of a movement down and then a ring that will attach the other two portions out to. That way we can kind of form almost a belt. I want it to have almost a teardrop shape as it exits that. We'll see if I can accomplish that. We're setting some lofty goals here. Not that I don't have time to work on it and figure it out. But this will be 3 individual pieces, because I think I want this to sit as dead center as possible, and there's not a way to split this chain that doesn't cause me to break. Like there's no openings. This is one contiguous piece of chain. So to make any sections, I need to cut it, and I think it would look better if both were cut rather than just having one side that continues uniform on and then one side that's teeing off of an O-ring. So since we have to cut it anyway, let's cut our first section, which I want to get to kind of between the breastbone and the belly button is where I would like that to end. That way I can start curving it off to the side to land around the natural waist is where I'd like that to sit. So let us try attaching this to our middle ring here. God, this is going to be great for people who like to watch other people struggle with simple tasks. I feel like the comments will be roasting me for for how hard this is. The plus side is I don't have to be good at this. This is just for the giggles. I mean, did I spend $100 to get all these different things? Yes, I used a coupon even. But nice heavy chain that's like weighty, because I wanted something that could press down fabric if I was wearing something more loose and like force itself into its shape. But that's what I wanted in particular. So let's fix that. Okay, start clipping it on. Goodness gracious. There's a lot that I still have to, that I want to learn. I don't have to learn any of this stuff, but I want to learn more about jewelry making. You know, it's so interesting to get to make something yourself to wear. I know we talked about that already, but jewelry's accessories, it adds a lot of flair. I mean, it feels like even when I wear the earrings that I'm wearing presently, they're like D&D, like a D20 and then a D10. And I got them from Gen Con, which is a tabletop board game convention in Indianapolis. As part of their official merch that they have these earrings. I was like, these are great. It's nice that it's like a conversation starter that also just kind of passes by on its own. Okay, so let's see. We're trying to get this to land a little further back, and so as we kind of drape this down, I think this will help to define the chest portions. And so I think I want it to be about this long. I have a longish torso. If I stand back, that might make it easier. So belly button's down here, somewhere around here, right? So that we can then drape to the side, maybe actually higher based off of that. But I want to separate enough from where the chest ones are going to run from the side, because they'll come from here and run this way. They'll eventually have to meet back there. So we maybe want to bring this up a little bit, and that way we have one split that comes down to join here, and then one of the other ones that will connect up to that one before it reconnects down here. I have to figure out what the logistics of that are. There's a lot of chains. The inspiration on Etsy just had, I think, 2 or 3, and they added some additional flourishes at the bottom of it, which maybe I'll do, maybe not. I haven't really decided that because we already have more chains going on. So let's see. Yeah, okay. So let's make our choppy chop. Let's see what we can get through here. Oh, that was a pretty good one. I didn't actually shatter this piece this time. These are small improvements here. I don't know if I can even separate this, though. This stuff is heavy. I don't think I can. I mean, oh, there we go. I did manage this. Oh, it did break. Okay, well, I had to be proven wrong at some point. Okay, so in length, this is where we landed. So now I want to attach an O-ring that will be large enough to house 2 pieces that are splitting off. And so I have my 4mm or my 6mm, and I think that the 4, because we use a 3 up here, and that might not be big enough. So I think we're gonna do a 4 here, and then I have these larger ones, which will serve as connection points for the joins between this and these, as we bring things down to one singular chain that will be connecting in back of the waist, so that it's at least secured in the back and we can pull everything to form around my body a little bit more. That's gonna go, but we're gonna change. So let's start with a 4mm, and we'll get that on, and then we'll see what we need, because this piece is going to go all the way around the body. So when I attach the first piece to this, first half of the chain is what I mean by that, I can just take all of the remaining loose chain and wrap it around me to see where it would connect back up in a way that I like for the drape. And that will, I can just cut at that point and attach. It doesn't require any more thought than that right now, as far as I'm aware. Maybe I should give it more thought than that, but the join pieces, we can always cut to remove a little bit more. I can't cut to extend, and so if it's solidly chain, even when I have to add the clasps, which I'll use a bigger clasp for the back just because it's going to be a lot more that it needs to hold together on the back, I still don't, but I will only be removing chain, not adding, and that's fine. I'm not worried about that. If I needed to have, an extra 3 to 4 inches of chain total, that is not an amount that I am super worried about in the scope of this project, at least. I mean, if it's a point that I have to buy more chain, I'd be a little bit sad that I have to spend more money, but we'll live. We'll make it through. Surprisingly, that won't be the end of the world. It does feel very weird to be assembling. This is gonna happen every time that one of these together. It's me missing it and then dropping the O-ring somewhere off of the face of the earth. Let me see if I can go find it. I did actually find it this time. Good news, everybody. Maybe if I start with the loose end first, and then I can attach it to the end that's on me that feels more stable because it's being held by something. That would help a little bit. I'm sure taking it off would be easier, but I also don't want to. Okay. So we have our join. So now, let's stand back and just see if we can get this to sit. So, as you can see, I have way more chain than what I need for this specific section, but I have to still do the chest. So my thought is having it sit like this, right? That we have this kind of shaping that cuts out, that still leaves room along the chest, that we can pull across my body to finish. So let's, detangle this. This is the problem with buying too much chain. This is a lot. Let me cut to me having this detangled. We made it. All right. So if I focus on just keeping this where I want it to land, I need to look up for that. Right, we have chain draping well on this side, but not this one. So I have to keep kind of pulling on the sides to get this to sit where I need it to. I'll have to shuffle back and forth a little bit to have this drape, because I would like to have some curve in this section and then use the smaller portions to pull a little bit. That's my thought process, at least. Now we're a little bit too loose, a little bit tighter, because on the back it's sitting too low. So let's see, bring it in further. We follow the natural waste. I'm trying to feel this on the back, and this is probably the least interesting part of this video, since I'm so focused on trying to feel it on me. I promise this is in service of a very particular goal. Can I pass where the O-ring is? Huh, I was writing up on it. So here, a little bit more slack. Tiny, tiny bit. I think it's sitting where I want it to. Right, so on the back it's sitting right here. Well, probably a little bit hard to see against white. But that's sitting at a place that I do like it. And I'll still have to attach things to it, and it'll be pulled and held in place by other chains connecting to this. But I think that that is kind of doing what I want it to, right? Like this sits loose enough that I can, but it's still it looks form fitted. And that's our goal. So if I take where I am, we're just gonna snip. It's just more fun if I just commit to things. And we'll continue this project probably in a second video. This one's already getting a little bit longer. Not that my videos don't end up running about an hour anyway. But I can't finish the other ones until I do some gluing. So the next one's going to be it in sections as we kind of finish this up, because the snake chain doesn't have loops to connect it. So it's a little bit harder for me to get bulk amounts of work done on it, because I need to connect it to end clasps. That way I can actually, fit it to a chain and have it connect into other chain sections. All right, let's make sure this is on straight. Kind of work out any of the twists in the chain along this way. And now we have the joys of reopening that O-ring and adding this third one into the O-ring. So we're going to have to focus up for just a moment. That way I don't throw it off of my body and then have to redo stuff. I mean, I probably could take it off of my body and then not have an easier time. I feel like we've kind of committed to this pathway through this video, and we're going to see it through, regardless of this risk of me dropping every single chain off of this one O-ring and then being mildly frustrated about it when it does in fact happen. realizing I don't have enough hands, so it might have to come off. Oh my goodness. I will say I am excited. So one of the other things that I want to do, and I think probably one of the next videos, aside from me finishing this project, but I'd like to hopefully provide variety in the stuff that I choose to work on, just so that I enjoy getting to work on my couple of different projects that I have in my head, and also keep changing up videos just to see if something works a little bit better, that people enjoy more. My tree in my front yard, I bought some trees for my property last year, and I had a chance to plant them in around September, October, somewhere in that window. In Arizona, it's important that we plant once we're through the summer, because that can be really punishing time for plants if you've ever been in Arizona in the summer. And so getting to set up the trees, I thought that the tree out front fully died, and it just suddenly, after one of the rains here in end of winter, put out leaves and now has flowers. And so I'd like to learn how to do some flower pressing. So I think that's going to be the next video, is making some cards for friends. I'll write some letters and mail them out. I'm going to practice using an invasive species. We are not mailing that. I will continue to put a disclaimer in that video. You do not mail anything that has the potential of spreading an invasive species anywhere. That will be going in the trash. It is just for practice, because they're everywhere, and I think they look nice if they weren't invasive. Okay, so we've attached. Here's where we are. Okay, yeah. There we go. Okay, so this is what we're looking for me. And so now we just need to connect these top pieces down, and figure out how we want them to hug the body enough, and then connect down into this chain, because it, as I said, everything's going to connect into this chain around the waist at some point. So if I make the top one more taut, it can lift this and create more of a like teardrop grape effect. I don't know, but let's see where this takes us, because essentially this is not going to follow that same process of placing it all the way around my body. I can't. For the chest, if I'm gonna attach it to the bottom, it needs to not go around my whole body. Maybe I end up doing that. Look, I have not had to attach a bra. I don't have the skill set developed for attaching a clasp up here on my own back, and I don't want to make a piece of jewelry that requires that I get assistance to put it on. So I'd like to prevent myself from having to struggle for something I probably will not be wearing as frequently as someone might need to wear a bra and get skilled at placing it on their own body. So, as I don't have that skill set defined, let's go ahead and just try and see what looks right just by draping it on the body, because if it can just go down and attach in the back near where the clasp will end up going, that's okay. And then I can use these larger rings here to act as join points, maybe for the snake chain, maybe not. They might not need it with how busy this all is, where the project that I was referencing from Etsy has these larger loops. Like these are small compared to what they were using. And so those acted as like new focal points around the tops of the waist, in particular on the sides. And I love that, but that might be too much with this project, with how many individual pieces there are. So I'm going to err on the side of not having those, which will mean that I'm using more of this chain to cover those gaps. That way, if I decide to pivot, that it's not going to be a big deal. I can just snip some chain, and we're all okay with that. Okay, so let's put this thing on. Let's see. We were using the 3 millimeters for these connections off of the main, our focal point. So let's keep that going so we're consistent. It'd be very silly to not be consistent at this point when we have already done several. We're going to attach the end of our chain. And this is where people who maybe do this really well have already made plans with measurements. But I often learn by just futzing around with things for long enough. It's like I took piano lessons for like a couple months. I did not learn how to play piano. The work ethic was not there. But then in high school, it's like, oh, I want to be able to play some songs. And I still didn't really have defined piano skills. We just learned to brute force it for a couple of them. None of them were that difficult. It was like to go with pop music. I think that's okay. Sometimes it's fine just to have the skill be improperly learned for just a niche purpose that's not serious. Obviously, that does not mean that everything. It is fine to learn to do things a wrong way or an incomplete way. It's hard to call it wrong when it still gets the job done, but if you're going to use it for more purposes than just that singular time, probably better to invest some time in learning how to do it right. Which is where I feel like I've been trying to go with sewing. Back when I had gone to conventions more regularly, I learned to sew not correctly. We just kind of were throwing fabric at things and then stitching it in very strange ways. It was not smart. And so I've been having to go back and like learn how to actually sew, which has gone so much better. It has made the sewing process way easier. Should have done that in the first place. We didn't. Okay, so we have this attached. So depending on how I want this to fit, if we're going across, I need to hold this in place because it's going to pull. We can try and separate, and maybe this is where I shorten the neckline a little bit, is just to have it lift. Because it would be nice to frame more of like the masculine side of features around the pecs, but that may or may not work from this angle. I wasn't sure how high to make this. So if we loosen this up so this fits around the love handles a little, let's see what we can get to. Because if we do wrap it around, just for the sake of example, it won't be exactly this way, obviously, in finished product. We would be kind of in this direction, and the shaping is not unique enough in relation to what's below. So maybe that better evokes a spider web feeling if I were like connecting one piece down to like here. And then I have to figure out how to connect these to make some interesting patterns. It certainly gives me things to think about in relation to this, because it's very much creating a chevron pattern. And I don't think that's what I want in the end. I had to think about this. Let's have you sit lower with me while I sit and work on this. Okay. Because if we lift this up further, does that help create it more interesting? So let's see, it's like sitting across my boobs. I don't know, that's what I want it to do. It's creating a much more dramatic gap on the sides. If I drape it a lot across both, so we're coming from here. Doesn't give much room to fit 2 more strands in between. So I feel like we do need it to be a little bit tighter. So then we have to get this to like connect up. So if I hinge these together, oh, that does look nicer. So if I'm connecting off of this back, I do like how that creates an interesting shape. I like shapes. Okay, so let's connect based off of where it might land here on my back. And we're just gonna pick based off of that vibe alone. Get this to sit flat. If we have it situated here, oof, I have really spun things off of center on this. Goodness. How tight do I want that? Probably better that I give it a little extra, and then I can tighten it if I need to. This is not going to be the finished shaping. So let's cut it here. And then we can mirror that same cut for the other side. Make sure I grab from the same end to end sizing. And this is where measuring and being more precise as we connect this in the end is going to be more important. So let's get this cut, and then we can attach, and then we will kind of wrap up and figure out how to plan for the next installment of this. We can see how it wraps up. Because I'm excited on working on this. Let's put you back up here. Just a little easier to talk to you when you're not below eye level. Okay, gonna attach the same way. We're gonna set our 3mm in. Unfortunately, this camera setup for this table not really serving a great purpose anymore. Because everything's on my body. I should have set it up to focus on that. Here, let's see what we can do for that, huh? Ooh, wrong direction for that to go, huh? We will have to fix how some of these sit. Okay, let's get into our attachment of this. We're gonna get our little 3mm ring, just the same as before. We'll attach it to our top one. Let's try hooking on this first, since that's proving to be more challenging for me. Might just be that I didn't open this one wide enough, which seems to be the case. There we go. Oh yeah, there it is. Always want to wiggle this in a little bit closer It'll help to keep the connection a little bit stronger too. Okay, goodness. So now we're in a good place for us to make this connection. And I think that, man, this angle's really rough. Trying to set this back as far as it can go, but I don't have that much room between my working space and where I am. Let me stand up and we'll talk about it here. So where we're landing right now, I need to get these to sit a little bit more here, and kind of find an even location for them on both sides to connect. Because I don't think these chains are very close in size to one another. They are not exactly the same, and so making sure that I've kind of spaced it out the right distance from one another will just help to make sure that I'm getting the right amount of pull from each side, because this is one continuous piece. So I don't need to worry about this being even on either side, aside from how I connect this to the sides. And by this, I mean these chains. So having it grab from the same spot, distance from the middle of each of these chains, will help for me to better define the shape. So like this gives me a good drape. So I think we're looking for somewhere around here, but as you can see, it's not sitting evenly. So I think we've got to figure out taking this off. And I didn't plan on that because I didn't add a clasp in the back. So we have some work to do, which will be me just maybe guesswork cutting it. I don't know. This is big enough. I can fit it around my chest. I don't know if I can get it off of my shoulders. Let's see if I can struggle this stuff off of me, huh? This is the downside. Maybe it's easier if we just take it off like a skirt would. Step to the side here. It took some gentle encouragement, but we made it. Okay. So this is our center section here that we were working from. If I'm going to cut it to attach a lobster claw, like to be able to fasten it one to the other, I'm just going to fold it in half. I don't need this to be perfectly center, because I can always just add a ring on one side to add that distance back in. So we're going to add some space into this, but we're going to cut at as close to that like middle pinching from the end that I can get it to be. I clipped it, but I guess not hard enough. We did it. It was questionable at moments. Okay. Let's see, because I like to have things, since I'm right-handed, I try and have the clasp operate with the right hand so that I can just focus on keeping the ring on the left hand. So I'm just going to make sure that when I have the necklace portions, that I'm still lining it up to the appropriate side, because this is the right side here. So how this forces the spiderweb portion to sit is what's going to matter. I'll put this back around my neck and take a little look-see in there on how this is shaping up. Hey, we did it that time a lot better than last time. That's improvement. Okay, so now taking this, let me just twist this while I'm here to get this to sit more how it seems to want to. Oh, so much more cooperative now. That's fantastic. Okay, so now we know this is my right side connection. So let's go ahead and attach in this case, I'm jumping up to a 6mm size of O-ring, because our lobster claws on this are quite a bit larger. Let me grab my example. I thought I had them over here. Are they back behind me? Seems so. Let me grab them. I set out a lot of my extra materials behind me just in case I needed them. Okay. These guys. They are much larger. I'd rather have something that, if I'm having to have weight pulled against it pretty consistently, I'd rather have something a little bit larger in size, where the last ones were these tiny little guys. So this will be a little bit better for me to work with for this purpose. So let's go ahead and just get that on, and then I'll attach the similar size on the opposite side, just so that we have the waist chain set up that we should be able to attach it now separately. Oh, this is already ready to go. Nice one. I don't have to do the work. My work has been questionable today. So let's make sure it's sitting flat in the way that I would like it to. Because based on how I'm going to grab this, I do want to at least take the moment to think through, is this the way that I'm going to want to try and clip it? Oh, this clips. I see. We have a fun problem. I need to add two, because when we have the chain laying flat, this sits perpendicular to the chain. And to get it to lay flat, I need to add one more. That way I can have the clasp sit against my back rather than being twisted against my back. It'll make sense in a moment. So let me go ahead and attach this. We'll close up the first one. Take that second one. This might be where it makes more sense for me to use a smaller one in our first loop, but we'll assemble this as it is, and worst case, just change one of the loops. And we'll attach this in. So now, on the other side, let me just make sure I get these to really nicely line up. Because right now, they are not. As I said, that's going to be my problem as I work this while on the body. Whoop. It's close, not quite. Okay, just a little bit further in. Sitting a little bit nicer now. Okay, so we have our first clasp attached on this side. Let's get some rings attached to the opposite side, just so that we can try attaching it all on the back and see where we are as we work this over. And then I'll kind of fold this section in half as we look to attach the other pieces. So I'll kind of mark roughly where I think this sits along my waist that I'm happy with. And then we will go ahead and see if it lands where we like it. And if not, we just detach them and attach them in a different spot. That's kind of the nice part about a lot of this, is it's not super committal, aside from me cutting this chain. This chain does not have... It seems like not easy to access link points. It seems like we do get them. They're just buried in the top portion where they connect with their other pieces, so maybe not super easy for me to have play nice. Okay, this side we're adding just one ring, which will sit off of the body, but it'll make it possible for the lobster claw clasp to attach while laying flat against the body. I don't mind if a ring like this sits off of my body a little. I do mind if the lobster claw is kind of making its own life journey on the back of my body. All right. Let's see how easy or hard this is going to be, huh? It's right there. Can we do it? Okay. Got it. So where we're at now, right? We have this, boy howdy, lopsided. We have this draping in the front, and then we have our class in the back, right? So now I need to take this off, and we are going to lay it flat, roughly based off of kind of where I can feel the waist is wanting to land, so that I can pull these guys and attach them to the sides of the waist. Because I want to have, again, some structure. I think that it's nice to have things kind of balanced in their pull against one another, especially with the bottom having some drape. So this way I can create some shaping and definition without having to like work too hard for it. So let's go ahead and what's the worst thing that happens? I mean, I won't get it even, so I think we're just gonna unclip the back of this. Kind of hold it in place with one hand while I check with the other where things were landing. That way on this one side, I'll know on the other side it's in about the same spot. Which is around here-ish. And so if I attach some rings to this location, then I just have to, I guess thread is the word that comes to mind. I just need to add on the pieces that are needed. So we're gonna go down to our 4mm rings instead, and we're gonna just attach them while I'm trying to hold it in place with my finger. Which really is not that feasible of a request out of myself. We're gonna come up with very silly solutions to just get this to work. But once I get one of them on, then we're set. Fantastic. So now this side is the side with the clasp, so it's going over this direction. And so I do want this to come out the top. I think it's the other part that I should mention is that the idea, because these have to face a certain direction to connect in appropriately, we want to make sure the chain is laying flat and that I attach the ring from the top so that the piece that's connecting to it will sit and pull from the correct side of the chain that I want it to. So we have that here. Let's go ahead and take this guy, keeping it as flat as possible in the same direction that I want it to land in. I'll slide this on. Great, we're gonna find out if that worked or not. Got both of them to sit flat. Look at me go. We're doing things. So now let me attach it. Now we'll see where we're at. we're so close. I'm gonna get better at this. Okay. So this is where it's attaching on the side. You can see it's draping a little bit under right now. We have extra that's not being used. I'm going to keep that as it is for the moment so that I can attach this one at the same place on the opposite side. It's okay that this is not exactly how I want it at this moment. We are going to be able to fix that. I just want to get this into like the relaxed position that I want it to end at. And then we will make the adjustments to pull this further out if I need to, because if we remove the slack, it's sitting more like that. But with the slack, it's really close. It's really close. We might just remove some and then have it attach further up if that's the case. So let's attach the other piece. We're going to disconnect this. And then we're going to mirror the addition of the chain on this side. Because we already have it in. We don't need to remeasure so long as we're keeping things even from our starting point up here where they connected off of. Just drag it down, keep them flat. I'm just going to do this the lazy way. Why would I do more than I have to? It's all for fun anyway, and this is kind of a niche piece of jewelry that I'm making for myself. A friend may use it for his Velma costume when we go to FanFest nights. But that's a one-night thing for him. I want to find uses for this in like regular wear when layered with other things. So I don't know how I'm going to make that go, but I'm going to try. I have the audacity, so that's half of the battle. So let's get our ring set up. Perfect. Now that we have it opened, this was definitely the more correct sequence than what I was doing last time. Just get them together. So around here. And based off of how this is moving, this side, so we're going to add it just like this. This is so not in the same exact location. So it's going to be a little bit uneven. I flipped this the wrong way. I did. Oopsies. That's the case. Still on the correct side, thank goodness. We're going to have to get used to the potential of this spinning around. I find it very difficult. I made a separate necklace. This was months ago. I feel like unintentionally it wound up being very inspired by Epic Universe with all of the stars and kind of... I feel like I look like I am an astrology girly, and I'm not. I think it's fine that people have fun with it, but it's not something that I place great weight into. But it certainly makes me look like I do, where it's got all sorts of stars, the glass beating. It was a fun project. I think technically it's like a princess-style necklace. Either way, I made it for myself. I was like, that seems like a fun project. And so I did it. And it was pretty decent, you know, for having to learn how to roll some of the chain out myself to add the beading. I thought it went pretty well. So there's a rat, which I think is pretty acceptable, honestly. It's sitting better now that I have both sides in that are helping to pull against each other, because these are taut. Like, I don't need to have much hold because they're gripping and draping in here. This is the connection point where potentially, depending on how things go with the other sections that we're going to work on next, may make sense for me to add more. But I do like, so far, the direction that we're going. The only things that I'm considering are whether this needs some of these other types of connections where Potentially, we kind of add more shaping along the front of this, because I do like having these like dangly bits off on the side, you know. Sometimes the unfinished look is better. Uh, but for now, I want to focus on the snake chain portion. So this snake chain is very small. It's about 1 millimeter in diameter, so not very big, but it really still shows up nicely in contrast to the main sections. And so it's possible that these become better options for me to work with draping uh, for this project. Because these pieces, and maybe I need to add more distance here. That's also a possibility, just to separate these further. Because now that we've kind of been assembling things, these are just very close. And so even if I add a strand from where it will start, now it just looks like a sibling chain. It's not doing a ton of different things. Because at this point, we're kind of. The inside ones become the problem. These ones, it's fine if they follow and drape off of the body a little bit, right? And you have something like coming out like this, because we can use that. This is good shaping. Alternatively, would be like layering it behind and just wrapping all the way around with a thinner one. I'm gonna have to do some playing with that, but that's not going to be a today activity. We've spent a good amount of time here together. I thank you if you have made it this far in the video for sticking along with me and listening. Hopefully, whether I was on your second monitor or you were watching along or just had me going while you were on a drive, hopefully you enjoyed the chatter and that you're having a great day. Be kind to yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.